First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Melissa Wiseman, and I'm Associate Professor of Economics here at HBU. And I wanted to share with you a little bit about my background, why a professor of economics is going to help you with how to read material. The way I got into this job was I first started out as a study skills instructor at UTEP, UT El Paso, and I taught students how to be more efficient learners. So that's why I've been helping with this series of workshops to help students be more efficient in how they learn, how they study for exams. And what we're going to cover today is how to improve your ability to pull information out of books. And I know you're probably like I am. You start college and you say, I know how to read, right? Since second grade, third grade, we all know how to read. But the reality of it is we don't know how to really read. So there are some things you can do that will help you pull information out of your textbooks. All right, first of all, what are the biggest problems that you have? I've got one that I experienced. I would finish reading a section, didn't have a clue as to what I just read. My eyes went over all the words, but I couldn't tell you what I just read. What other kinds of problems have you had? Three times. So you read and read and read, and it doesn't ever stick. Okay, what else? Becoming sleepy, absolutely. What else? It's boring. You don't have an interest in it. That's a tough one. What else? Okay, so you remember incorrectly. Or another thing is, you remember insignificant detail and you totally miss the main point, right? All of those are problems that we face. So here are some of the things that I experienced. You know, I went back to school after I already had my children. So my kids were in school and I'm going back to school, and I would sit down to study, and I would probably take 3 naps while I was reading one chapter, because I would literally, it would put me to sleep. Talk about boring, right? So I had to find something that engaged me to keep me into the material. This is the challenge. You can't just blow it off and say, it's boring material, therefore I'm not going to be able to do it, right? You have to find a way to make it work. Another problem that I had, I would be thinking about other things. Oh my gosh, that trash can needs to be emptied. I need to remember to go pick up the dry cleaning. I need to make my daughter's dental appointment, right? I couldn't keep my mind focused on what I was doing. So my mind would wander. I didn't understand the material. I would read it, like you said, over and over again, and it didn't make sense to me. So that kind of made me frustrated and made me want to give up. I never had enough time to finish the assignment. You know, we always talk about how much time you need to study. Well, instead of thinking of time, you need to think about completion of assignments. If you've got to have chapter 4 read before you go into class, then you need to make sure that you finish the task. So I would say, okay, it'll take me about an hour to read this chapter. What do you think happened almost always? I didn't get it finished in an hour. It took me 2 hours. So that meant I had to adjust my time management. As I began to get into it, I began to realize, I need to leave a lot more time to really get through this chapter. So one of the things you're going to do as you're going through this exercise, you're going to kind of evaluate, did I get through the task or did I not? I always had good intentions, but one of the things that happens with college is that you're learning good time management. You need to have a planner. You need to have specific tasks written out every day for what you're going to accomplish that day. And if you don't get through them, you got to have some overflow time that becomes study time because you didn't get everything accomplished. All right, so that's how we're going to kind of start on this. Now, why is it important to read? The biggest thing, the most immediate thing that I want to say to all of you is the problem I see with my students with tests is they've learned a lot of stuff, but they weren't able to read the questions critically enough to know what they needed to bring in to answer it. Do you understand how being able to critically read exactly what the question is asking you for is related to reading your textbooks? And I know a lot of students think being efficient means, oh, all I have to do is go to class, listen to the teacher, write down the notes, study my notes, and that's good enough. But you're losing the opportunity to improve your ability to read and understand that material. And let me tell you, so much is written, so much of your work life, you're going to have to read memos from bosses, you're going to have to read contracts, you're going to have to read progress reports, business plans. You better be able to read to understand the detail. So reading critically is a very important skill. You're not just in college to get a degree. You are here to improve your skills so that you can become proficient in whatever area that you want to go into. Next, let's talk about timing. Reading the text before you go into class is critical. When you're talking about maximizing the value you get from sitting in a classroom, if you've already introduced yourself to the material by reading it before you walk in, what do you think the benefits are of that? How does that help you? What do you gain?
It refreshes your, when you're learning in class, it refreshes what you already read in the book.
Right. So you're hitting it the second time. What happens to your understanding if you've kind of already familiarized yourself with the foundation and you're in class and you're listening to it? Do you think you understand it a little bit better? Absolutely. Do you think you retain it a little better? Absolutely. If you don't read the text and you just go to class, that's introduction time. You've just lost part of the benefit of being in class. It could be learning time, not introduction time. So reading the text beforehand helps to deepen the learning and makes you understand what's going on, which means later on you need to study less because you're really utilizing that class time at that particular point. Okay, before I go to this, I want to make one more comment about the second point, about reading the text before you go to class. If you get to sections that aren't clear, so who was it that said you don't understand, right? You read it and you think, I don't know what this means. You put a question mark by it. You go into class, and if the presentation doesn't clear it up for you, what do? You ask a question. That's what you're paying for, is time with the professor to ask those questions to clarify what parts didn't come together for you. So if you read it and it didn't work, you listened to lecture and it didn't work, that's a key point. You've got to ask questions. You need to be assertive about your learning. We are here to serve you, to help you understand, and if something isn't clicking, do not think it's because you're not smart enough to get it and everybody else is getting it. That's wrong, because I can guarantee you, if you're not clear on it, there are others in the classroom who are not clear. They're going to benefit from you asking the question. Sometimes it just needs to be stated a different way. And I'll tell you something else about asking questions. It helps me be a better teacher. It helps me to understand where the miscommunications are happening. So questions are good. Now, again, I already alluded to this. Some mistakes on exams are due to poor reading skills. If you're not reading, you're not going to be able to figure out what the right information is that you need to come up with to answer on the exam. The other thing that's a real benefit here is, most of us are not really strong in our writing skills. That's just a fact. It's the nature that we come from. Most of you have had multiple choice tests. You've not had the opportunity to improve your writing. If you read well-written material and you're deciphering it and you're taking it apart, you begin to see how well-written material is put together. This is going to help you become a better writer, which is also a benefit. You're going to get used to proper grammar, good sentence construction, the way to develop an idea. And so as you read it, it's going to help all of that understanding. All right, advantages of marking a textbook. First of all, it helps you to concentrate. This was the thing when I started teaching study skills, right? And I thought back to all the times I'd fall asleep. This is an active way that's going to engage you with your book so you're not going to fall asleep, all right? It's going to save you time in the long run, because if you spend an hour reading through the text and you've gained nothing, what do you have to do? Got to go back and read it again. Some of my students say to me, I've gone back and reread the text right before the exam. Not a good spending of time to reread the text. Before the exam, you need to be learning. You have to have already pulled out the important parts. So I'm going to teach you how to pull out those important parts. And in the long run, it's going to save you time. We're going to teach you how to identify the important material. And this is harder than it looks, because main ideas, as we're going to learn, are very general, and it's so easy to miss them. So we need to be looking for them as we're studying. Next, it's going to make it easy for you to review. You're going to have certain things highlighted, not a lot. Do any of you have the trouble of when you're highlighting, you end up with half the text highlighted? Yeah, I did too when I first started out. I found out I highlighted everything because I thought I had to learn all of it. You don't have to learn all of it. You have to pull out the main points. That's all you need out of the text. Then it becomes a valuable reference tool. If you need to go back and look something up, you've got it all marked. It's easy to find it. Now, there are several steps in reading a text. First of all, we're going to talk about previewing the text. Then we're going to show you how to selectively mark main ideas and underline sub-ideas. And then last, you want to review your markings in your notes to make sure it makes sense. Did you pull out information that kind of is meaningful and makes sense? All right, so let's talk about the step of previewing the assignment. One of the most important things to do is to understand the organization, right? You've got to develop the overall framework that's going to be presented in the chapter. So this may sound a little bit superficial. Look at the chapter title. What is the subject you're going to be studying? All right? The next thing you want to do is read the chapter objectives and introduction. Most texts come with a little overview. Here are the subjects we're going to cover. If it doesn't have that, then you need to flip through and just look at the bolded headings. That gives you an idea of how this material is going to be presented to you. So what you're doing is you're constructing your house, right? You're putting up the framework, and you're saying, here are the major things we're going to be learning about. So you begin to get an idea of what all you're going to be learning. I have to tell you a funny story about reading the chapter headline, the title of the chapter. I remember in a finance class that I took, they had a bonus question worth 10 points. That was pretty good. You know what the bonus question was? What's the chapter? What's the title of the book? Not even the author, but what's the title of the book? And guess what? I couldn't remember it. Is that like not paying attention to know what the title of the book was? I could describe it. To this day, I can describe it. It was a blue cover. It had a gold little label on the center. It had about 6 words in it, but I couldn't tell you what the title was. So looking at that chapter title is really an important step that what you need to take. Now, there's a summary. Kind of glance over that real quickly. But you see what you're doing. You're setting up the framework before you begin the task. This only takes a couple of minutes, not very long, but it helps you to begin understanding what you're going to be covering. All right, now let's look at how organization is going to aid in this. I'm going to give you a little, a list of phrases, okay? I want you, does anybody have a second hand on a watch? No? You do. All right. Do you mind helping me with the timing? Okay, I want to give 1 minute. All right, you're going to have 1 minute. See how many of these phrases you can learn. Are you ready? All right. Come sit on the floor over here so you can see. Okay, stop. Now, if you've got paper in front of you, see how many you can write down. Do you want to sit down over here? When you've written down all you can think of, put your pens down so I know you're done.
If you didn't grab one of these flyers, I'm going to go ahead and pass them around.
Did you get one, Ben? Here, one. All right. Anybody need more time? You think you're going to think of more? Or you're done? All right, let's see how well you did. Check them off. How many did you get? No, if you have the basic idea, that's okay. We'll count it. All right. How many of you got all of them? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 10. How many of you got 8? 7. You got 8. Good. 7. 6. Good. 6. 5. Okay, a few of you got 5. Good. 4. More of you got 4. 3. More of you got 3. 2. Some of you got 2. And I'm not going to ask for 1, but if I had done it, I probably would have gotten 1. Right. Okay, so most of you got about 3 to 4 right. Now, I want you to try it again, but this time it's going to be organized a little bit differently. Now, 1 minute. Can you time me again? Look at these and see if you can remember them now. Okay, time. Go to a new piece of paper and start writing. Put your pen down when you're done. Okay, about 10 more seconds. All right, let's see how you did. Check them off. How'd you do? All right, how many of you got 10 right? Oh, big improvement. How many of you got 9 right? Great. 8, 7, 6, 5. Good. Most of you got 5 or more right. I'm assuming everybody got more right this time than the first time, correct? Fabulous. All right. Now, so what's the point of this? Organization helps you to remember. So one of the things we're going to do is we need to take written text, all these words, and we need to uncover the organization of it so that we can find out what we're going to be reading. Now, first of all, we need to distinguish between main ideas and specific ideas. The main idea is very easy to miss because it's a general statement, and we naturally go to detail. But when a main idea is introduced in a section of material, usually there's some words that kind of tell you this is what this topic is going to be about. This is what we want to show is true. And that's what you want to separate from the rest of the material. You've got to be able to identify the main ideas. So you have to be looking for them. So you can ask yourself, what is this section or paragraph about? If there's a heading, that's going to give you a clue. That's going to make a statement about that heading. So what is it you need to know about that heading? You can start to learn to identify topic sentences. You know, sentences like a thesis statement. What is it that the author's trying to get us to understand about this material that's about to come? However, sometimes in an introductory couple of paragraphs, that topic sentence is found at the end of the paragraph. So you have to notice when you're reading a couple of paragraphs, does it lead up to the conclusion or does it start with the conclusion and then give you supporting information? So you have to be looking for something specific as you read the first couple of paragraphs. You're going to use the headings as a guide. And again, it can either be at the beginning or it can be at the end. But you're looking for what's the main idea as you get into your subject. Sometimes you have to read the whole passage before you can decide it. And then you go back and you can find the one sentence that says what the passage is about. And that's the one you want to mark as the main idea. Sometimes the main idea isn't included in one sentence. If material's very dense or complicated, sometimes you can put it in your own words more concisely. So sometimes you're going to make notes in the margin. Instead of highlighting their words, you're going to put it into your words because you can do it more efficiently. All right. So when we actually start marking our text, we've done our preview. We've learned the idea about main ideas. So we're first going to read and underline selectively. Do not underline sentence after sentence after sentence. What you want to uncover is the outline. Have any of you outlined material? Any? Okay, good exercise to do. Why? Because the outline shows you what the author put together before they started writing. It shows you the organization. It shows you how ideas are related. When I was in high school, I used to have a horrible time remembering things. I don't think I'm, excessively gifted at all, but I was a hard worker. But I spent hours outlining. That's not a good thing to do. That takes a lot of time. You can do it faster and more efficiently and obtain the same result by marking instead of rewriting the words. So that's why I'm going to say we're going to underline selectively. So to show relationships, here's my main suggestion. You're going to use a highlighter to show the main ideas, and then you're going to underline sub-ideas in ink. All right? So it may be that they introduce a section with the main idea, and then one paragraph develops a sub-idea. The next paragraph develops another sub-idea. The last paragraph develops the third sub-idea. So if you highlight the main idea in highlighting, and then you've got underlined phrases or words to follow that, you're beginning to reveal the outline. What are the major ideas and what's the relationship to them? So the other thing is, you're not going to underline whole sentences. What you want to do is just pick out the words that give you a complete thought. So major words, you can leave out little words, so you're going to be very stingy with that underlining, right? So it may be a phrase, it may be 2 words from this sentence and 2 words from another sentence that go together to give you a complete thought. And this is a skill that you develop. You got to do lots of reading and lots of practice, and the more you do, the better you're going to get at it. All right, so you can combine selected words in one sentence or words in 2 sentences to make a complete thought. Now, what do you do if you've got a vocabulary word? You can highlight the vocabulary word and then underline the definition, or I like to kind of differentiate vocabulary words from my main ideas. So sometimes I would box in the vocabulary word. So when I saw that, I would know that that was a vocabulary word. Or you could use a different color highlighter for vocabulary versus main ideas. So somehow kind of distinguish what those vocabulary words are. That helps you begin to learn the terminology. You have to learn the language of the subject that you're going to be studying. If you don't speak the language, then you can't function in it at all. All right. Sometimes ideas are enumerated, and they'll use words like first, second, third. These are really critical words that tell you what the organization is. So what I would do is I would circle the word first, second, finally, because that would reveal to me how those ideas were related to the main idea. It helps me follow it real carefully. Or sometimes it'll introduce it to you and it'll say, the 4 causes are, and it'll give you the 4 causes, then it goes on to explain each one. So I would highlight the word 4 causes, and then each of the following paragraphs where each one is explained, I would underline the cause, and then I would read enough about the cause so I would understand it. Here's where you don't spend time underlining everything. You're trying to understand what that cause means. So when you go back and you see one of the causes underlined, it's going to bring to your mind what that means. So you're starting the learning process now, but you're not underlining everything. So you're going to underline the main idea of each part. One thing you can do is if it says 4 causes and then it just talks about the 4 causes, you may need to number in the margin each one of the causes. Numbering things helps you to remember. Oh, there were 4 causes. What was the 4th one? Can I remember the 4th one? So if you see numbers in the margin, it helps you pull out that information like a list, and then it's easier for you to remember. Sometimes underlining doesn't work. Sometimes the material is so dense and so complicated that you can't figure out what to underline. The best you can do there is read a section, see if you can put the major ideas in your own words succinctly. If you can get at least a gist of the idea as you go through the text, that's still a benefit. Here's another great thing about learning. If you're writing summaries, that is a tremendous skill. To be able to take a passage and put it into concise words that convey the idea of that passage, that is a really good analytical thinking skill. When you are doing research for papers, what are you supposed to do when you're reading other people's passages? You're supposed to summarize in your own words. So you're starting that skill. You're also developing your ability to become articulate, to be able to find the words that explain something. All right. Lastly, you can kind of make notes in the margin. All right? Now, one system doesn't work for all texts. One system doesn't work for all people. You have to experiment with it and try until you find what works best for you. And you're going to find that what works for one subject doesn't work for the other subject. So you have to adjust as you go. But all along, you keep asking yourself, what is the author wanting me to know about this information? What is the information that is the most important that I need to walk away? All right, so let's get into some more detail here about main ideas. You're going to highlight the main idea. You're going to underline sub-ideas that develop the main idea. So this is kind of like the main idea is Roman numeral 1. The sub-ideas are A, capital A, B, and C. Okay? Now, within each of those sub-ideas, there's what we call supporting material. This is the part we get drawn to. This is the part that's interesting. These are examples. This is things like, for instance, this is specific detail. But the supporting detail is there to help you understand. You probably aren't going to need to remember the supporting detail. It's there to help make sure you understand it. So as you're underlining the sub-idea and you read the supporting detail, you get it, right? So you're looking at the supporting material to see how it explains that sub-idea. If it's clear, then you don't underline supporting material. And you'll be able to discern whether or not you need to pick up that supporting detail or not. So, examples, comparisons, contrasts, facts, quotations, vivid descriptions, definitions. These are all supporting. Now, if it's a vocabulary word with a definition, yeah, you probably need to highlight that and mark it so that you know what the definition is. Because it's more memorable, we tend to go to that, and that's what you tend to mark if you're not paying attention to main ideas and sub-ideas. So you have to be real careful about that. Now, transitions are words that kind of help take you from the main idea to the sub-idea or to supporting detail. So subheadings would give you ideas of this. Enumeration, first, second, third, finally. The organization of material into paragraphs is a way to help you understand what the information is. Words like next, after, at the other extreme, consequently, the result, for example, for instance, all of these are transition words that tell you what the information is that you're about to read. Usually, it's going to introduce either supporting material or sub-ideas. So those have got to be like little red flags that jump up when you see those words. All right, how does this information relate to this major idea that we're learning about? All right, you were given a handout called Improve Your Motivation to Help You Concentrate. This is a little passage that came from the textbook that I used to teach with. I worked with Nancy Wood. She was the director of the study skills office where I first was employed, and she's the one that taught me about study skills. And this was in her textbook. You'll notice, now there's 2 pages there. Skip the big print page. Go to the second page that says Improve Your Motivation to Help You Concentrate. Now this is just kind of an example. It's one way to do it. See, what I did with this passage was I went in and used some yellow highlighting to kind of illuminate the main ideas. So here's what I want you to do. Let's just look through this and just look at the highlighting and what's underlined. So, outside factors. Notice what the title is, How to Improve Your Motivation to Help You Concentrate. So these are outside factors that are going to help me concentrate, right? So there's outside factors and internal factors. And I read about those so I understand what those are referring to. I don't need to mark anymore because it's pretty evident what an outside factor is and an internal factor. Then we talk about setting goals to stay motivated. 5 additional suggestions. Do you see how I'm being really, really thrifty with what I underline? I don't need the whole sentence. I just need the phrase. So, have a reason. So here was like a heading, and I just highlighted the one word to help me remember. Reason for going to college. Okay? So then this is supporting detail that explains that. Now, create interest. Do you remember earlier some students said the material's boring? It's your job to figure out why you need to know it, right? You have to develop a motivation internally to want to learn how to do this material. You can't use the fact that it's not interesting as a reason to not do it. So you have to find some reason that this is important to learn, even if you don't really like it, right? So create interest, work for early success, reward yourself, consequences of not meeting your goal. What's going to happen if I don't pass this class? All right, visualize the life you're likely to lead if you do not meet your educational goals. All right, so we've also put comments in the margin. If you choose to write comments, you could do that. But do you see how, not even reading the whole passage, but if I go back and skim through this, I get the basics of what's going on. Do you see how much better this is in terms of learning the passage? All right, take the next handout. It's the big type on your handout. Try and mark that. Just read through it, mark it, and see what you can come up with. You may have to read through it twice before you decide what you need to mark. Try to be selective. Just words that you need to pull out that will help you remember. If you finish with it, go back and skim through what you've highlighted and underlined to see if it makes sense to you. Sometimes you have to go in and add an extra word. If you just read the highlighting and it doesn't make sense, that's why you got to go back and re-look at it. most of you are done. Who still needs another minute? Everybody okay? All right. Now I'm going to show you an example of what I came up with this. And you know, it doesn't have to be exactly the same. I highlighted 2 types of vocabulary, and then if I could have done it on this, I would have put a little 1 next to specialized vocabulary and a number 2 next to general vocabulary. That would remind me that there are 2 types of vocabulary. Next, I need a method for developing vocabulary. And this method has 4 steps. So then I underlined look, record the context, look it up, and associate it. Those were the important key words in the 4 steps. And I can just look how quickly I can go through this and pick up the main ideas of what this passage was trying to tell me. You see how this is the stuff that I need to try and remember out of the text. Okay? You notice I didn't do whole sentences? As I'm looking around, I'm seeing nobody is highlighting whole passages, and that's good. You need to be selective. You've got to have a method behind what you're doing here. All right, finally, you're going to go back and review. When you get through a section, before you go forward, you're going to go back and you're going to skim through. Does it make sense? Half the time I'd find, okay, I went to sleep during that paragraph, right? Didn't have anything marked. What happened? And I have to go back and reread the paragraph and say, okay, what did I miss? Or what I marked didn't click with me. It didn't recall what it was about. So I had to add a few more words to remind me what was that passage about. All right? So quickly go over your highlighted and underlined notes. You may have to go back, add additional words, and you're on your way to learning how to do this skill. This is kind of hard to teach. I can give you the basics, but I will tell you, you're going to adapt and develop your own procedure that works for you. Do you see how much more engaged you get with your reading by doing this? It's tremendous. It means if you're going to do it this way, you're going to have to set aside more time to read your text before you go to class. But the payoff is huge. You're going to start seeing, you're going to do better on your exams because your ability to critically read and understand is going to be improved. Your ability to write is going to be improved. Your ability to remember is going to be improved. You're not going to have to spend so much time at the end working on it to try and remember all of it. I'm just going to make one extra little comment here. The last thing I would do when I was getting ready for an exam was I would make study sheets from my lecture notes, and I'd go back and look at the text, and I'd pull out what I needed to add from the text to my study sheets so that I'm pulling material together. Sometimes you might find that information in the lecture wasn't very clear. If you go back to the text and reread it after you've had the lecture, sometimes that's all you need to make it understandable. And then you get it, and then you're in good shape. All right? Good luck. If you have any questions, please feel free to come and see me, and I'll be glad to help you.